Welcome everyone to a casted game for Age of Empires 4, and today spawning on the west side of the map playing in blue we got crackedyhere playing as the Ottomans, and his opponent in the east side playing in red. We've got Van der Dorf playing as the Rus. Welcome everyone to Dry Arabia. And an interesting matchup. The Ottomans, oh, don't want to change the colours there anyway. The Ottomans versus the Rus. It can be aggressive at times, probably will be aggressive, but hey, we never know with Age of Empires 4, it can throw wacky things in your favour, or against you. We'll see. The Rus do often opt to open up with plenty of scouts. There's a second one already for Van der Dorf, looking to get the bounty and the sheep, no doubt. And what I love about the Ottomans in this particular matchup is the Ottomans obviously get free units from the military school. It takes a bit of time to get there, you need to actually establish those buildings. Wait for some time for the units to mass up, but once they do, it can be pretty nice to get going. Especially add in the meta and the additional attack speed that offers. It can be nice to see them mass up units. Now the Rus, they are no strangers to feudal age aggression or generally massing up units themselves. A great wood economy. Access to the Kremlin, increasing the wood drop-off in terms of the villagers bringing back more wood to the town centre, or the mining camp, or the lumber camp rather. But also the fact that they can get early wheelbarrow and also an early double broadaxe depending on the bounty that they get. Speaking of bounty, should be able to get a nice patch of the deer camp here, Van der Dorf here, and also possibly on the west side too, which it looks like he's already got. 3 scouts really helps. The question is, how many scouts did Crackedy go for? He did opt for 2. In fact, it might be a Crackedy that got that one. Now map-wise, kind of an interesting approach. I wonder whether the Rus will opt for second town centre, which they often have been doing. Oh, wait a minute. Van der Dorf, you ran out of sheep. And that's one big problem of killing sheep right underneath the town centre. Sometimes you get a few less villagers, but more sheep coming on the way. So a bit of idle time on those workers, but it can happen. The Rus economy should be okay to compensate, but ideally, I want to keep that food pumping in. Going out to stone here, Crackedy, looking to get the stone he needs for a military school. Not opting for an early military school, as you often do with other matchups, but against the Rus, it's kind of futile, right? Because, of course, the Rus, they get their gold in the Dark Age through the bounty, but also the hunting cabin passively getting that gold, so there's nothing really to pressurize in the early game. Hence, no instant military school for the Ottomans, opting for the twin minaret madrasa. They're getting a good amount of food that way. Going to protect the gold and the stone on the front lines with the Kremlin. No real surprises with that landmark choice. There was once a time the Golden Gate was a prominent one, but the Kremlin boosting with the Kremlin Gremlins has made it something else. Made it too good to pass up. I gotta say, struggling on sheep here, Crackedy. Bringing some back home, but comparatively, obviously, he's been dealing with 3 scouts up against him. Challenging for the bounty. Gonna pick up this one on the west side as well, potentially here. Sheep hugging that wall. He doesn't want to get caught. He's trying to make a run for it. Doesn't want to get eaten today. And it will be a second town centre for Van der Dorf and the Rus. Again, no real surprises. They've been playing this way for a while now. The question is whether the Ottomans will be looking to punish that, or will be able to punish that. If there's one civilization that can, it's probably them. And that sheep, maybe we'll take a look back on it, but it looks like this one got away, right in the corner. I'm not happy about being slaughtered today. And there it is, there's the Kremlin. And this is such a great landmark, I've got to say. I mean, what doesn't it do? Gives you extra wood coming in, gives you extra protection. Also gives you access to the Kremlin Gremlins. Scouts just harassing a little bit. Oh, killing the sheep there. Holy moly, alright. Crackedy. Saying, if you're going to attack me, I'll take your sheep. He's feeling hungry, Crackedy. An interesting choice of the lumber camp, I've got to say. Kind of fully expecting the lumber camp to go on this side next to the town centre protection, but ultimately perhaps is opting this way. He might be getting a second town centre. Question is, where does he put it actually? Now if there's a civilization that can be a little bit more aggressive their town centre placement, it possibly could be the Rus. But he might look to just shore up the gold here. So forward gold, which is a bit rough, does have one on the back, but splitting up in this situation might not be a bad idea because the Ottomans, they do like to concentrate their attacks on one particular location, especially because they're usually up against a timer, right? When the Ottomans opt for only playing one town centre. Although, having said that, it looks like it's getting enough stone for a second town centre himself, so I think the Ottomans might be matching this. It's certainly a play style. I think playing one town centre against the Rus can be very tricky. Like, you do set yourself to fall behind, right? So second town centre play might not be a bad idea. I feel like the Rus are one of the civilizations that do dictate the terms of the engagement and the fights and the matches. Often they say, well, I'll do two town centre, and the question is, will you just stay one town centre and try and kill me within 10-15 minutes, or will you opt for second town centre yourself and play a little bit less all in? It's going to need a little bit more wood here, Crackedy, though. Looks like that town centre will be at the back. Understandably so, because the Rus can certainly hold their own. It's not one of those civilizations that have to play very condensed as an economy. We do see the English, for one, doing that we saw in the last game. He doesn't actually have enough stone here. He's missing 7. He might have to go back onto the stone. That's a bit rough. He pulled away a little bit too early, although maybe not. He's going to go for the military school first, and then, yeah, maybe work that way. Maybe it will just be one town centre. Have to see how Crackedy addresses the incoming problem of a fledgling economy booming away for Van der Dorf. I gotta say, the two towns to play for the Rus is so strong because it gives access to the deer so well and protected. It's such a great source of food. Something that the Ottomans, still rely on the sheep, and that's going to be running out pretty soon. So we'll need to venture out to the deer camp if we can here, Crackedy. The question is, how does he protect that location? One way of doing it is being aggressive and trying to keep the enemy at bay, but being aggressive against the Rus can be tricky at times. We shall see how many units he can get out. Scout on scout action. Villager lead slowly starting to build now. A good 5 villager lead. Here comes another military school. It's going to take at least another maybe 5-10 minutes for the units to really pop out. Opting for Sipahi, going for the Anatolian hills. No real surprises there, because of course he does need that food income, and at this stage he doesn't really have the hugest amount of security. Well, a spot here, there's a lot of gold in one. Holy moly. 8,000, 4,000, 4,000. That's a pretty big spot for the gold situation. Now, if it was a different civilization, different matchup, where the Ottomans best passively, or a civilization that was playing a bit more passively, this could be a bit more important, but of course the Ottomans probably going to be looking to be on the front foot more than anything. Especially being a one-town centre, you get the feeling that in the next sort of 10-15 minutes, it's going to have a resolution, this game, one way or another. Like Crackedy's going to do some damage, or that economy is going to get completely out of hand for the Rus. Crackedy just keeping an eye on things, and he will spot that second town centre if he hadn't already. He spots it now. But I'm sure he would have known about it. Quite commonly, pro players will just check the stone just to see if there is a second town centre been taken, and I'm sure Crackedy would have done that. Like going onto the gold vein, and maybe it might be a fast castle-ish from Crackedy. Looks like it in terms of resources coming in. Mehmed Imperial Armory. This is going to be a nice power spike for the Ottomans, because it does give them access to free siege. A couple of mangonels can always come in handy. Now, one way to claw back a little bit of the economy disadvantage is maybe to get some of those relics, but we shall see what he decides to do. Now, free units always helps to keep a good standing army. Looks like the Rus going to go for the Castle Age themselves. It's got to be the High Trade House. No real surprises there. There it is. In a pretty decent spot, I've got to say, obviously far away from his main base, but it's going to get a lot of gold this way. It's always a worthwhile risk. walling up on the west side, just making sure it doesn't get caught a cropper by those knights that the Rus do love to mass up. There it is. There's the castle age for Crackedy. The real concern for Crackedy is that being a one-town centre and the castle age, the Rus are in two town centres, not too far away from that castle age himself. Moss coming up, looking to get those relics if he can. Now, ideally, often the Ottomans would love to get the imams from the vizier points, but he had to spend his on the Anatolian hills. Doesn't seem like he's got another set of vizier points just yet. Van der Orff getting to the castle age with that high trade house. And a very similar timing. And we're going to be able to go into the deer camp of the north. Pretty exposed, no outpost there to protect just yet. If that's something that maybe the Ottomans can spot and challenge, could be an issue. Running into some problems with the knights. Knight will go down. Very good pick off there by Crackedy. Van der Orff scouts going to be backing away down south. But a really nice pick off on that knight. And you need those things to go your way when you're up against the Rus. Plenty of food and gold coming in for Crackedy. Wait a minute. Is he doing an Imperial Age? Is he doing the fast Imperial Age? It could be a thing. I mean, he's hoarding a lot of food and gold. Now, it's always a possibility with the Ottomans. And it almost feels like it is going to be that case. What's really exciting about the Ottomans is that they've gone through this little phase, this little adaptative phase where they used to be super aggressive. It used to be the one thing they could do, really. It used to be a very telegraphic civilization in terms of what they wanted to achieve. Looking to be very aggressive all the time with the military schools, pump out units and try and kill their opponents with massive units. But since a well-known content creator started doing this crazy strategy with the Ottomans, people have been catching on and doing it quite often. And whilst I wasn't expecting it at the beginning of the cast, well, it's looking that way, possibly. Either that, or Crackedy is hoarding resources, which he wouldn't usually be. Two spearmen chasing down the knight, possibly won't make it this time. Does have a couple of horse archers and also the warrior monks, which makes it a lot quicker to get those relics for the Rus. Speaking of, one relic coming in for the Ottomans. Now, what is nice for the Ottomans is the fact that they do have military schools does give them the opportunity to get a nice standing army for free whilst they edge towards an Imperial Age. There's going to be a nice timing on that, by the way, because obviously playing a low eco approach comparatively to the Rus, it means it's a little bit easier to get to that Imperial Age, and he does then have a timer though, because of course Van der Orff won't be too far behind if that economy starts to get online. 20 villages extra compared to his opponent, and quite possibly going to pick up his lion's share of those relics. Speaking of, one more here to be about to be picked up. One here, very nice location for the Rus to pick up. Looking to wall up as well with the extra palisade walls. The fortified palisade walls will make it a little bit more tricky for the Ottomans to break through, but it will indeed be a fast Imperial. Might need a transition onto berries and maybe the deer camp. It could be a good time now, actually, whilst it still can. It's going to be running out of sheep pretty soon here, Crackedy. Not enough space, I'm afraid, and there it is. That's a lot of villages. Going to need to find another source of food. That's going to be the berries for now. I found it off. He's interesting enough that, you know, they're having a second town centre. Also, it does pay back eventually. In the initial stages, it is very hungry on the food. You can see he's only got 97 food in the bank. Not huge amounts of units and extra compared to the Ottomans, of course. It's going to be Istanbul Observatory. There it is. Going to be built with 12 villagers and will give access to the Great Bombard, of which you will be able to get a couple for free from the Mehmed Imperial Armory. Sacred sites being captured now. 3 to get. 1 on the way for the Rus. Rus Knight going a little bit too close for comfort. Might need to back away for now. Now, not that I think it's going to be much of a problem, but the Ottomans, if they are put under pressure, the fact that they play a very condensed base building structure all these nooks and crannies, these choke points, makes it very difficult for enemies to really get on top of them. Especially when you're dealing with mangonels and a bombard or two. Eventually you will want to move out. It's going to have to move out soon because that villager lead is really starting to escalate for Vanderdorf. So in the next 10-15 minutes we're going to see a resolution to this game no matter what. I know it's a bold statement, but ultimately when you're dealing with a match situation like this where one player has a significantly greater economy but the other player has a tech advantage looking to leverage that, you know it's going to end one way or the other in the next 10-15 minutes or so. Unless something crazy happens. Now bear in mind, with the influence of the barracks, or the blacksmith rather, we'll be pumping out those units. In the Imperial Age, it gets a good plus 40% extra production speed. Now, 2 sacred sites actually coming under the influence of the Ottomans. It's a nice bit of gold trickle. Janissaries could be a really nice option, and it looks like he is opting for that. Janissary guns, and that's going to be really powerful dealing with any sort of cavalry that the Rus want to opt for. So speaking of cavalry, Sabahi diving on that wood line, getting a good raiding value here. Villagers having to back off of Vanderdorf. So the villager lead that he has is being nullified at the moment, at least for the time being. There's a lot of man-at-arms for the Rus. Now you might be wondering, why don't we see the mass of knights that we often see with the Rus? Well, ultimately, when you go against the Ottomans, it's always difficult to mass cavalry, because of course the threat of the Janissary is incredibly powerful. It throws the enemies off their initial game plan. So one thing to consider, whilst we did talk about earlier on the cast how the Rus do tend to want to dictate the strategies chosen in a match, well, the Ottomans can sometimes dictate the army composition from your enemies. Pushes them away from the cavalry, or into the man-at-arms line of things, which the Ottomans can generally match pretty well. Sabahi backing away for now, but keeping the Rus at bay, back at home, idling what economy he can, and he's getting good value out of it. Bear in mind, most of these units are probably free. A lot of them very weak, though. Gotta say, a couple more hits on those, and those guys are gone. Spearmen on the chase. Now, the question is, what are the Ottomans building up? What are they cooking? They've had the Mehmed Imperial Armory for a while, so triple mangonel, bombard on the way. This is where the tech advantage comes into play. It looks like elite man-at-arms. Oh no, just regular Castle Age man-at-arms at the moment. Of course, very expensive upgrades, the Imperial Age upgrades, comparatively to the economy that Crackedy has at the moment. But he's going to need to push soon. Does have 59 military, relatively equally matched by Vanderdorf. But the one thing he doesn't have necessarily here, Vanderdorf, is siege. We'll need some springalds. And it's an interesting strategic point to discuss, actually. That the Ottomans do often force reactions out of their enemies. Whether it be virtue of steering away from cavalry units because of the threat of the Janissary, or needing springalds versus the inevitable mangonels that they have. From the Mehmed Imperial Armory, it's got 3 of them. And those mangonels could be a difference maker here. There's the first springald here for the Rus. Gets a great hit on those spearmen. So low health now because of that massive shot. But absolutely free. Now, if Crackedy can get on top of that springald, that would be absolutely huge. Comes down to a bit of a siege fight at this point. Here's a second springald. Need to deal with this. Janissaries in good numbers. Spearmen charging forward. Mangonels deploy, and they get those 2 springalds, which is absolutely huge. Taking the springalds is massive. Allows the man-at-arms to tank on the front line. Allows the springalds, well, allows the mangonels to get the shots off and clear up the infantry. There is another springald for the Rus, but he needs more than just one. Mangonels deployed, taking out infrastructure. He's pushing on in. This is where the Ottomans become really powerful. He's pushing on hard now. A couple of units peeling away. Well, it's just mostly a warrior monk. Either way, this is where the action is. The military coming forward in the form of the Kremlin Gremlins. I feel like it's kind of almost the last dice thrown here by the Rus. This is where it becomes tricky. The Kremlin Gremlins are doing a bit of damage, but the Janissaries trying to get on top of the springald. He does get on top of the springald. Takes that main siege threat out of the window, out of the equation. Allows those 3 mangonels to really start piling on pressure. Starting to lose a bit of the meat shield on front lines here, the Ottomans, but Ooh, villagers might come out. He needs to torch them down if he can with the mangonels, but he's going to get a massive shot on them. Villagers still remain, though. They're alive. A couple of janissaries trying to protect them. One mangonel goes down, possibly a second, quite likely a third. And he will clear out that siege, but at what cost? Wait, torch, torch, torch. He does. He gets it in the end, but not without the mangonel getting the last shot. And the Rus will look to defend at this position, will kill most of that army. The Ottomans' push has been stopped, but will there be a second wave? That's the big question. This is where things become a little bit dicey for the Ottomans. He has killed a decent number of villagers. 24 went down in that fight. And it's quite pivotal he did that, actually, because you can imagine van der Dorf, he had another extra 24 villagers at this point. That economy would be absolutely bonkers. He's done some damage. The question is, was it enough? But the addition of the elite upgrade to man at arms is going to be a nice one for sure. Especially when you consider there's a lot of spearmen there. Man at arms will do well against those. Crossbows will be needed for van der Dorf, but van der Dorf playing defensive. It's not necessarily what the Rus would love to be doing. Now we have the Great Bombard. Now this is a unit that, if can be protected, can offer so much value for the Ottomans. Looks like he will be. Now the big problem for the Rus is, if we thought the mangonels were an issue to deal with, well, he's now got to go against the Great Bombard. There's going to be another in queue. In fact, there's going to be another one popping out very soon. 2 Great Bombards. The splash damage will start to escalate. The big concern for the Rus is we're reaching the 23rd minute mark of the game. This is where food sources become an issue. And whilst he does have the high trade house, which does spore the deer, which he'd be pretty reliant on at this stage, a farming transition is probably the last thing that van der Dorf would want to do right now. He needs the wood for siege, he needs the wood for everything else. He might need a farming transition, and that will be very rough. The Ottomans, relying on the deer camp in the north, obviously cannot take the boar, of course, adherent to the Islamic tradition. Can't gather that meat. There's a second bombard on the way. The push has slowed down for now, but it is only momentarily. 68 military units, the 3 units pop... Holy moly, this is where things are getting a bit out of hand. Take a look at the military coming forward. Really streaming forward. The timing attack for the Ottomans looks like it's going to pay dividends at this point. But with 4 Springalds, looking to try and push back the Great Bombard. One thing to consider, though, is the Ottomans will look to try and snipe those Springals if they can. If they can get rid of them, allows the Bombard to do what they need to do. Takes out the Kremlin, which is one of the 3 landmarks he needs here, Crackedy. It's quite possible. He might go for a landmark snipe. You gotta say, as time goes on, it feels like the Ottomans are getting stronger and stronger. The 3 units, the Imperial Age tech up. Elite man-at-arms is in play. Blacksmith upgrades coming in too. Here comes the final fight. You feel Springals on the back line, looking to try and take out the bombards if they can. Man-at-arms for the Ottomans, tanking on the front line, allowing the Janissaries and the crossbows to get the range attack. And he's going to overswarm this. Van der Dorf doesn't have enough. Those crossbows aren't getting the man-at-arms down quick enough. He's having to back away, back to the town centre. But the bombards will start to unpack and start to shoot down that town centre before too long. He might even focus on the Springals. Got 5 Springals, but the Springals having to detract back. They can't deploy. They are deploying now. Bombards being pulled back for the Ottomans, keeping them alive. And he's going to absolutely onslaught this. Ottomans, the Crackedy, he's pushing on forward with the Janissaries and the crossbows, getting on top of that wood line. Villager lead that he had, the Rus, going to be absolutely decimated. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. He takes the game, Crackedy, with the Ottomans, with the Imperial Age Ottomans push. With the Great Bombards, with the Janissaries, they take over Dry Arabia. Hope you guys enjoyed this casted game. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Take care, and see you next time.